The sound of shattering glass echoed through the house, piercing the stillness of the late afternoon. A small, trembling girl stood frozen in the living room, her tiny bare feet cut and bleeding from the shards scattered across the carpet. Tears streamed down her pale cheeks, mixing with the dirt smudged on her skin. She hugged herself tightly, whispering the same words over and over like a fragile prayer. "I can't stand anymore. I can't stand anymore." Her stepmother towered over her, eyes filled not with concern but with fury, pointing an accusing finger at the child as if the little one had committed some unforgivable crime. The little girl's heart raced with fear, each breath sharp and shallow. She was too young to defend herself, too small to explain. Pain throbbed in her legs, but what hurt more was the weight of rejection pressing down on her soul. In that moment, she felt completely alone in a world that should have protected her. If you believe kindness has the power to change lives, if you believe that second chances can heal the deepest wounds, then please take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to our channel, Kindness Glow. Together, we can spread hope through stories that remind us all of the power of compassion. Glowing Star. The story of this little girl begins in the aftermath of a tragedy. Just weeks earlier, she had buried her father, the only parent who had loved her without conditions. His sudden death left her not only heartbroken but also vulnerable. With her mother gone years ago, the responsibility of raising her fell into the hands of her father's second wife, a woman who had never truly accepted her. Instead of comfort, she found coldness. Instead of love, she faced constant scolding and disdain. Every day became a battle for survival in that house. She was only 6 years old, yet she carried burdens far too heavy for her fragile shoulders. Breakfast often came late, sometimes not at all. Clothes that once were cared for by her father now hung wrinkled and stained. At school, she struggled to focus, her mind clouded with hunger and worry about what punishment awaited her when she returned home. Teachers noticed her sadness, but when they asked questions, she simply shook her head, too afraid to speak. The breaking point came on a rainy afternoon when the stepmother, frustrated with her own life, turned her anger toward the child. The little girl had accidentally knocked over a glass table while trying to reach for her teddy bear, the only thing left that reminded her of her father. The crash was loud, the glass scattered like tiny daggers across the floor, and in the chaos, her feet were cut deeply. She cried out, but instead of receiving comfort, she was met with shouting. The stepmother's voice filled the room like thunder, drowning out the little girl's sobs. On her knees, trembling and bleeding, the child whispered, "I can't stand anymore," not only because of the physical pain but because of the crushing emotional weight she had been carrying for so long. Those words, soft and desperate, carried beyond the living room. Unbeknownst to them, someone else was standing at the doorway. A man, tall and sharply dressed, his face frozen with shock. He had come to the house by chance, following a story he had overheard about a grieving child abandoned by fate. He was a millionaire, known for his wealth and business empire, but what most people didn't know was that he, too, had grown up feeling unwanted. Something inside him stirred when he heard those words, the same words he had once whispered as a boy. And then, with a voice that cut through the chaos like a lightning bolt, he shouted one single word, "Stop." The room fell silent. The stepmother turned, startled, while the little girl lifted her tear-filled eyes toward the doorway. For the first time in what felt like forever, someone had spoken on her behalf. Someone had stopped the cruelty. The millionaire stepped forward, his expression both fierce and compassionate. In his hands, he held a small teddy bear he had brought as a gift, and when he saw the child's wounded feet, his heart broke in ways he couldn't describe. He rushed to her, kneeling on the glass-strewn floor without hesitation, lifting her gently into his arms. Blood stained his expensive suit, but he didn't care. All that mattered was the little girl trembling against his chest, clinging to him as if she had finally found the anchor she had been searching for. In that embrace, she no longer felt invisible. She no longer felt alone. What followed was not an easy journey, but it was the beginning of transformation. The millionaire made it his mission to protect her, to heal her wounds, both physical and emotional. He confronted the stepmother, his voice steady, his presence commanding, making it clear that her cruelty would no longer be tolerated. She tried to protest, to justify herself, but under the weight of his piercing gaze, her excuses crumbled. For the first time, the little girl saw someone stand up for her, someone willing to fight for her dignity. As the days passed, the millionaire became more than just a rescuer. He became a constant presence in her life, ensuring she received care, attention, and love. Doctors tended to her injured legs, but it was his kindness that began to heal the deeper wounds within her heart. Slowly, her eyes, once clouded with sorrow, began to shine again. She laughed, timidly at first, then freely, as though rediscovering what it meant to be a child. The millionaire found himself reflecting on his own childhood, the nights he had spent hungry, the days he had endured scorn. He had built his fortune not only out of ambition but also out of a desire to escape the pain of his past. And now, standing before this little girl, he realized that perhaps his true purpose was not found in wealth but in giving someone else the chance he had once needed. But the path ahead was not without obstacles. The stepmother, unwilling to lose control, tried to interfere, weaving lies and manipulating situations to her advantage. She painted the millionaire as someone meddling where he didn't belong. Yet the truth was undeniable, etched into the frightened eyes of the child who had suffered for too long. And so, the battle for a future truly began. The following weeks unfolded like a storm brewing across the horizon. Though the millionaire had stepped in to shield the little girl from immediate harm, the stepmother's bitterness only deepened. She felt exposed, her cruel treatment no longer hidden behind closed doors. Neighbors who had once looked away began whispering. Teachers at school, now aware of the child's bruises and exhaustion, grew vigilant. The truth was surfacing, and the stepmother's control began to crumble. But with every attempt she made to hold on, the millionaire stood taller, stronger, more determined. He visited the girl daily, often bringing books, warm clothes, or simply his presence. Sometimes, he would sit beside her on the porch and listen as she told small fragments of her story, how she missed her father, how she kept a photo of him hidden under her pillow, how she often cried herself to sleep when no one was watching. These confessions, whispered through trembling lips, pierced his soul. One evening, as rain drummed against the windows, the little girl clutched her teddy bear tightly and asked the question that haunted him long after, "Why did my daddy leave me here?" Her innocent eyes searched his face, desperate for an answer that could make sense of the pain. He swallowed hard, fighting back his own memories of abandonment. He wanted to tell her the truth, that her father never intended for her to suffer, that sometimes life is unbearably cruel, but instead, he spoke words she could hold on to. "Your daddy didn't leave you. He's watching, and he's proud of you for being so strong." It was in moments like these that the millionaire realized something profound. He had once believed his wealth was his shield against the world, proof that he had overcome his past. Yet here was a fragile child reminding him that real strength lay not in fortune but in compassion. Protecting her, giving her hope, was worth more than every dollar in his empire. Still, challenges mounted. The stepmother, desperate to rid herself of the child and retain her late husband's inheritance, sought legal means to push the girl out of her life. She argued that the child was too much of a burden, that she had no resources to care for her properly. It was a cruel irony. She sought freedom from responsibility while holding tight to money that never truly belonged to her heart. The millionaire, however, was not a man easily shaken. He hired lawyers, investigators, and advocates for children's welfare. What began as a personal mission turned into a full-scale battle for justice. Documents of neglect surfaced, testimonies from neighbors and teachers were recorded, and slowly, the truth was laid bare. The little girl's voice, once silenced by fear, now carried through the halls of the court as others spoke on her behalf. During this time, the girl began to change. With the millionaire's support, she discovered small joys again. She started attending school regularly, her once drooping head now lifted high. She learned to paint, pouring her emotions onto canvases that spoke of rainbows after storms. At night, instead of crying herself to sleep, she would sometimes giggle, curling up with her teddy bear and the stories he read aloud. Yet healing was not instant. There were nights when nightmares woke her, when she screamed out, convinced that no one would ever truly love her. The millionaire would sit beside her bed, gently stroking her hair, reminding her that she was safe, that she was not alone. Each time, her sobs grew shorter, her trust deeper. Slowly, the walls she had built around her heart began to crack, letting the light in. For the millionaire, this journey awakened something long buried. He recalled his own childhood, the cruelty of adults who had dismissed him, the loneliness that had driven him to chase success. Standing beside this little girl, he confronted his past and found healing in offering her what he had once needed most, unconditional love. Months later, the case reached its climax. In a crowded courtroom, the stepmother sat stone-faced, her eyes sharp with defiance. The millionaire sat beside the little girl, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder. As evidence of neglect and cruelty was presented, gasps filled the room. Teachers described her hunger, doctors detailed her untreated injuries, and neighbors admitted they had long suspected mistreatment but had been too afraid to interfere. When it was the millionaire's turn to speak, the room fell silent. He did not boast of his wealth or influence. Instead, he spoke from the heart. He told the story of a small child who whispered, "I can't stand anymore," and how those words had awakened something within him. He spoke of her resilience, of the light in her eyes that deserved to shine, of the duty every adult has to protect the innocence of a child. His words did not simply echo in the courtroom, they lingered in every ear, every heart. Even the judge's eyes softened as he listened. And when the gavel finally struck, declaring the stepmother unfit and granting the millionaire guardianship, a wave of relief swept through the room. The little girl clutched his arm tightly, her tears flowing freely, but this time, they were tears of hope. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, but the millionaire shielded her, carrying her through the chaos with the same tenderness he had shown since that first day. To the world, it was a story of wealth rescuing the helpless. But to him, it was far more personal. It was a story of redemption, of finding meaning beyond riches, of love rewriting the fate of two broken hearts. From that day forward, the girl's life changed. She no longer whispered that she couldn't stand anymore. Instead, she began to dream. She dreamed of becoming an artist, of painting stories that spoke of courage and kindness. And beside her, the millionaire stood not just as a guardian, but as a father in every way that mattered. The seasons shifted, and with them, the rhythm of the little girl's life transformed. Where once there had been hunger and fear, there was now warmth and security. The millionaire's mansion, once cold and echoing with silence, became filled with the laughter of a child rediscovering joy. Hallways that had known only footsteps of businessmen now rang with playful giggles and soft lullabies at night. She began to thrive in ways no one thought possible. School became a place of excitement rather than dread. Her drawings filled the walls of her new home, bright skies, blooming flowers, and sometimes even a man in a suit holding her hand. She found comfort in bedtime routines, a glass of warm milk, a story read aloud, a kiss on her forehead. Each small act of care stitched together the wounds left by years of neglect. For the millionaire, the change was equally profound. He had spent so much of his life chasing numbers, business deals, and a reputation that stretched across cities. Yet he discovered that the greatest investment he had ever made was not in companies or stocks but in the fragile heart of a child. Watching her heal was like watching the sun rise after years of endless night. And in her laughter, he found pieces of himself he thought he had lost forever. Still, healing was not a straight road. There were moments when memories haunted her, when she woke in the middle of the night, crying for her father, or when she grew silent at the sight of broken glass. But each time, he was there. He knelt beside her, whispered reassurances, and reminded her that no pain could erase the love that now surrounded her. Slowly, she came to believe it. Slowly, she learned that her voice mattered, that her tears did not fall unheard. Years passed, and the little girl blossomed. She no longer whispered that she couldn't stand anymore, instead, she stood tall, proud, and hopeful. The millionaire, once hardened by the world, softened in her presence. Together, they became each other's second chance. She found a father where she thought she had none, and he found a daughter who gave his life purpose beyond measure. And then one day, standing on a stage at her school art exhibition, the little girl, now full of light, spoke words that silenced the room. Holding up a painting of a small child standing on shattered glass, with a figure shielding her, she said, "This was me. I thought I couldn't stand anymore. But someone shouted, 'Stop,' and picked me up. Because of kindness, I can stand today." The audience erupted in applause, but the millionaire's eyes filled with tears. In that moment, he knew her future would never again be defined by pain. It would be written by hope, love, and the strength she had found within herself. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with friends or family who believe in the power of kindness, and subscribe to our channel, Kindness Glow. By doing so, you help spread stories that remind the world that love and compassion can change everything. Red Heart. Before we end, we have one special request. Comment below with the words, "Kindness can heal," if you believe every child deserves a chance to be loved, protected, and cherished. Glowing star. And so, the story closes. A little girl once broken by sorrow now shines like a beacon of hope, all because one man chose to listen, to act, and to love. It is proof that sometimes, the greatest miracles begin with a single word spoken at the right time. Stop.